I think we are...
Just tell me when.
When?
Publish.
I'll just give it a minute, just to...
We're Facebook Live.
How's it looking? It's YouTube Live.
Oh, we're published.
Okay, brilliant. So, thank you for coming, everybody. By coming, I know everybody here is a current or past student of Manchester Codes, graduates and current students. We unfortunately have had to close it off to the public today because the weather is way too warm. And we don't want people passing out in the classroom, as horrible as that be. We have had, for the last 24 weeks, some very hard-working students. They've hopefully learned a great deal with us that they're going to prove tonight, hopefully. This looks very promising. So
these are slides, not the app.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. It's all in the presentation, not the actual application, and that's what we teach everybody. Make great presentations, yeah. No, no, genuinely, everybody's worked really hard. I haven't actually seen these applications yet, so I'm really excited to see them myself. And without much further ado, I think I'll hand over to Richard and Whitney to present. Thank you.
So, introducing. Thank you. So, yeah, there were 4 of us. Now there's only 2. But there we go. I know there's nothing at all. So this app was made by Julie Barnes, by myself, Whitney, Richard Pentecost, and Russell Parade, who's on holiday at the moment. Probably enjoying the heat somewhere in Portugal. So this is a mobile-first single-page application for hiking adventures. And there we go. So starting this project, we had quite a few objectives. Like a mobile-first web app, because we wanted to use React for the web version rather than React Native, which would be harder to learn. We had the plans for GPS navigation and route recording, and secure authentication for the user, and enabling the user to save the routes on their maps. And a search for finding landmarks and planning the routes around them. And of course, a metrics section, which is what you need if you're serious about your sports. You want to see how well you've done, so you want to see the altitude of the routes covered, what time you covered them in. And so that was the objectives. Needless to say, we didn't achieve them all because it's as every possible software project, it always runs into unexpected difficulties.
Unexpected difficulties.
Unexpected ones, well, yeah. So yeah, would you like to go through what we actually?
Yeah. So it's stated there. We managed to get the custom routes and static maps to work, and the GPS positioning on live and static maps, but we weren't able to use the local storage in quite the way we wanted to. That was something we would do if we were to carry on. Working model of the metrics graph, which we'll demonstrate when we in a couple of slides' time. We used a search component for finding landmarks, and this was actually one of the issues this took quite a long time to sort out because we were using a map box, which is one of the sort of map things to create the routes, and they have a geocoding a feature on it. But one of the problems with it, you couldn't actually search landmarks, so you couldn't search sort of Scarfell Pike or Ben Nevis. You could only search like cities or postcodes. So we had to go around and get the Google API so that we could actually search for individual mountains and stuff like that.
That's suggested by Susanna actually. So thank you. You
thanks,
resolved a big problem in the project.
But we managed to get the secure user registration authentication, and again this was another issue because we waited to the end to do this. And authenticating routes once you've created an app is a real pain. So these were the technologies we used: Express.js API with Mongoose and MongoDB for the back end. We used Create React App to set up the environment for creating the front end. Bcrypt for keeping your passwords and all the rest of it secure. JSON Web Tokens for making sure that once you've logged in, you can't accidentally log out without intentionally doing it. React Mapbox GL wrapper and Mapbox GL JS library. So I mean they're the same thing. One's just the React wrapper for Mapbox. Yeah, the Google API, Mapbox directions, static API, Rechart's React library, and you know we deployed it on Heroku for the Express side and the Zeit for the React app. So I think now we go through what we've done. So this is the splash page that you start on.
Obviously, as you can see, it's a mobile-first application, so it looks better with the browser squeezed in a bit.
Hence why it's not full screen. So yeah, Whitney did this sliding bar, which tries and gives you a little idea of what the app is about. So if you sign in.
This is the moment of truth, and it works, as you can see.
So this is the home page. We have hard-coded Scaffold Pike as our starting point. Obviously, I think in future you'd probably try and do it on a geolocation or select where you wanted to start. So from this page, we've got the profile here. Obviously, in a real app, if you like, we would have a little bit more information associated with it. Maybe the ability to change your your credentials or what have you.
And also, there's a place to display kind of your saved routes, your metrics, more kind of personal information like GPS tracked routes and that kind of thing for the future.
I'll start with the bit we haven't done, the weather. So this would ideally show you the weather for the next 7 days for a location, presumably the location that you're actually trying to work out the route for. If we go to this, well, go back to home quickly. This is actually where you create a route, and I'll come to this in a minute, and actually create a route. But on this version, I have actually done a couple of routes, true Blue Peter style. So we've got a couple of routes here. First one is El Capitan, which is a famous mountain or rock face in Yosemite.
As you can see, you can cover 14.7 kilometres in just 173 minutes. So I think it's a little bit on the optimistic side. So if we were to take this further, we choose a kind of better calculation provider for the navigation.
And I'll just go to the metrics here and show you that. So this actually shows you the metrics of that walk, if you were to do it. So if you were starting at the top of El Capitan, that is. So yeah, that took Whitney a long time to do. So
well, it was not just me. It took Russell a long time first before me, and then we managed to finally get live data in it. So I think it's looking pretty nice. It takes a while to load. This is why we only display the last route saved.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So if we go back to this, so you can use offline map, which this is just a copy of the map when you create it, so that if you don't have your Wi-Fi or 3G or 4G or whatever, you can just open this and then you've got that saved.
And you've got the ability to navigate as well using GPS. Obviously, we're not next to El Capitan, so we'll just say that your GPS is out of range.
But if we were in Manchester,
however,
we can do this. And it shows you where you are in relation to your route.
And this is of course a static PNG, so it works out where you are on GPS, because when you save a map, you save its geolocation bounds as well. And using an algorithm, Google Mercator algorithm, it works out where the GPS position is compared to the pixels on the map. And what you can do with the map as well, if you resize the window and the GPS moves out of range, you will still be, you can scroll to it, it will still stick to the same page. It won't just be centered by default.
Okay, so what I'll do now is we go back to home, I'll show you how we create routes. So if I just take that off. So if you could search for anywhere, you could, so if we do Snowdonia National Park, you can go there, you go to create route map, and then you click anywhere on the map, and it calculates, and then you can do a cycling route, or you can do a walking route, you can save it, and then, hopefully, you'll see it in there now.
There you have it.
You can use the offline map. The other way of creating a route is to use your geolocation. So from here, we can again go to create map, clear that route, and then we can again create a route, save it, save route, and that should be there as well. So now you have four routes. This is something we do have, which is now a bit sort of this is a bit legacy really, because previously we didn't actually have the maps on the routes, so we'd save the maps separate from the routes. So in the new version we would get rid of this because it's all up there. Using this offline map is no different to using the one that's up there.
I'd just like to point out as well, when the maps are saved, the route is actually coloured in, so you can specify your route, save it as a PNG, and then using GPS you can navigate down it.
And that, I'm not going to show you registration because everyone's registered before and these sort of things. It does work, trust me.
It does work. Promise.
So if we just go back to this. So really the next thing is just what we really would do in the future if we were to carry this project on. One of the things, as some of the other groups may have found, our React components are very big and difficult to navigate around because we just try to get something working as quick as possible. There'll be a lot of refactoring in our project, a lot of user kind of files to try and abstract out some functionality.
Also the user interface at the moment is it's not adjusting to the screen width at all, so that will definitely be an important step in the future to provide more content for a desktop version, have some images or something.
Yeah, and despite Ursula and Joe's best attempts to get us to do test-driven development, we have not done test-driven development.
But on the bright side, we have learned why it is important. When we started the project, we were going at a very quick pace, and then towards the end, as the complexity rose to unmanageable and sprawling size, it just got really difficult.
There were a few tests written, but not many. We'd implement the weather, we'd implement the full metrics. Basically, I think we've pretty much gone through all these things that we do, create it in React Native. But yeah, so, and the other thing is, I think ultimately, if you were to do this, you try and make it into a social platform where you'd be able to share routes, rate routes, add photos of you on those routes, give comments and feedback on whether you thought it was a good one or a good route or whatever. So, that would be probably the ultimate goal of this sort of project. Obviously, that was miles out the scope we were trying to do in the 4 weeks that we had. So we managed to just get the sort of bare bones of it working and the concept proven.
And what would be important as well to have the user experience that user would expect from progressive web app is to cache the images and also find a way how to record the GPS tracking routes if you're recording a route to make it work offline. So that's something we really wanted to do, but just didn't have the time in the end.
Yeah, and I'd say that one of the best learnings from this were really trying to use, frameworks or libraries that we hadn't used before. And one of the ones I used a lot was the Mapbox one, which all of the documentation is for the Mapbox.js, and obviously they've got a React wrapper, but it was incredibly difficult to find anything relevant. And so you just end up trying loads of different variables that you think might be the name that corresponds to whatever the JS version was. So it's quite useful just getting experience in doing that, because I imagine every single library has the same issues. So yeah, that was quite a valuable learning process.
Well, there's something to be said about doing your research first to understand what interfaces you can create. So when we started, a lot of this was just based on the assumption that this thing should work, and then in the end, of course, it was a lot more complicated. So the Mapbox search doesn't work for mountains, so we had to involve Google API search for that. And so I think this was great as a research project. If you were to do it properly, you would spend that first month just on researching.
Yeah, exactly.
What you can get out of the third-party modules.
That is our project, Mountain Bagger. Are there any questions?
Actually, how does the offline save feature?
I don't know. You did it, didn't you?
Oh, at the moment the offline map save features is not completely offline because it's still hosted on a URL within Mapbox. So what we can save now is a URL link. but it's an API provided by Mapbox, which defines the map. But the hardest part was for our database needs to save the bounding box and the coordinates, and then work out your location depending on them. So in the future, ideally, we would have our own database for the images. We wouldn't just be relying on the third party to host them.
Okay, to download that.
Yeah, and of course there's something to be said about having a native app as well, because native apps allow you to load offline tiles for maps and things like that, which we had no idea about going into this. We just assumed that there could be offline tiles and we could just copy them. So hosting our own map tiles would be the best thing.
Right, thank you very much.
No, wait, second on.
Yes. Okay. Do we just go? Or
Yes,
not?
Cohort.
Just go.
Yeah.
What's the bounds of the camera?
So if your right shoulder's on the blue box, you'll be in that.
And the same as the left?
You can step left of it.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, you're good there. Where's it in development?
No. Just Trump said. Sorry, I'm just eager for this one.
Just going to assume we can start.
Do we just jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody. On a day of very momentous national interest with Boris Johnson becoming the Prime Minister, I thought we'd wind things back a little bit and focus on regional interests. So we bring to you Team TramSafe. We're still working on the name, not totally convinced yet, right? But we'll get there in the end. And you can see from our nice project titles that we've got there, very grandiose. So we've got Tom, who's head of clickable maps, Jack, who's head of the back end, which is slightly confusing. He's applied a little coach as well. And there's myself, Mike Huggins, who's head of monetization. It was actually a very collaborative project anyway, so we all sort of worked in different areas anyway. We just had a couple of little specialisms that we sort of stuck to. So I'll admit that this was all Tom's idea. He had a few problems on the tram. And some incidents which he would like to avoid in the future. So that's where the development started. So I'll leave it to him to explain what the problem is and what our solution is for it.
Yeah, so it all happened when I tried to avoid the tram guards. But these guys pulled me back and said, we can maybe spin this up in a different direction. And ask the question, do you actually feel safe on the tram network? And I'd definitely like to point you to the fact that it could be a Friday night, late, you've had a few beers, you're getting on the tram, and there's a gang of youths at the tram station. If that happened to me, and I was on my own, I'd probably think, I'm going to get an Uber. But is there a way to maybe alleviate that stress and give you the opportunity to jump on the tram and use the public tram network? So, as we are branded with
transport for Greater Manchester Colours, we've taken it upon ourselves to try and solve this problem. And the solution? TramSafe. Users can actually see in real time where guards are on the network. And obviously that's a very good thing to know if you're a young woman or a young man on the tram at night and there's a gang of yous at the station. The way that the app works is we would allow other users to update with a location if there's a tram guard on the network. And signing into the app, you can then look in real time where a guard would be on the network. The app was made with a mobile first React app, and we give a free overview of every stop on the network using an SVG clickable map, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. The backend was created with as an Express server with Mongoose. And Mike, can you just give a quick explanation of the monetization? What was used?
Yes, I'm just coming from the slides.
Sorry,
yeah.
it's coming up on slides. Okay. So, sorry.
Yeah. So how we did it?
How we done it?
Well, we started off with Trello straight away. Day one, you know, it's the easiest way to manage a project when you're working remotely. It allowed us to allocate tasks to each other, tag each other in things, so we all knew where we stood and the timeline of where the project was progressing to. So it was really simple, and this is what our board looked like by the end. I think you probably can't read any of that, and that's for the best. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So for the styling, we used SAS. Everything was broken down into modular components. So you can see, you know, this is our sort of main import file with abstract, space, you know, different components. We tried to stick to the BEM naming convention as well, block element modifier. But Lord knows we're only human, so I'm sure we did stray at some points from that. So you think with all this kind of great underpinning that the styling will be excellent. Next slide, please. I mean, it's not perfect. It's especially in mobile mode. Actually, it's not great, but we'll show you when we load it up. You know, things are really janky, out of position somewhat, and part of the problem was. And even if you look back on the Trello board, one of the first things we wrote was, what does the website look like? And we still haven't answered that question today of what we want it to look like. And things have changed, and we've thrown stuff on top of other stuff, and it's all got a bit out of whack. So that is something that we would definitely, we're aware of it, and it's kind of a future solvable problem, if you like. Next slide, please. Monetization. So we've gone for a little different tack with this, and this is something that actually persuaded me to come on the course in the first place. So we've implemented something called COIL, which is real-time streaming payments. So a user who is subscribed to COIL comes on the website, streams and pays us money using the Interledger protocol, which is just essentially a transferal system between different accounts. Real-time payments, and it's all built on a kind of React module / library, so it's relatively easy to implement as well. Next slide, please. We have a payment pointer, which points to our Twitter account, so we're already on social, ready to go live. It looks like just through testing alone, we've made about £2.40. So we'll spend that tonight, I'm sure. And it's all paid in XRP, which is a digital asset, so really low transaction fees and very quick transfer times as well. And we will go on to implement Google Ads, so there'll be a sort of option, if you're not COIL registered, you get Google Ads. If you are COIL registered, you get premium content. It's a better way of earning money on that front. And that's the monetization side.
So, how did we actually implement the user interface? We required a map. First things first, we jumped online, tried to pull down like a static PNG of the Metrolink map. That was nice and colourful. It had all the different routes on there. It looked very professional. But there wasn't a way to interact with the map, and we literally just wanted the map shown to the user where they could click on the map. So we went a different route slightly. Oh, play on words there. And we went down the SVG route. SVG gives you the opportunity to create lines, polygons, shapes, different things, or draw with different things, but with a coordinate system. And doing that, it gives us the ability to sort of wrap all of the stations in these different boxes, as you can see. And we effectively create these clickable elements all over the map. So when you're on mobile and you're using your big fat thumbs, you can still like miss the station there, hit Old Trafford, and it'll still register as Old Trafford for the user. Going forward. Sorry. So the way that as I sort of alluded to there, we had rectangles, got an ellipse here. This is a polygon in SVG speak. Another polygon here. All of these different shapes, A needed a center, and B needed to be sort of created in React speak as a component. And the way that we did that, we abstracted the React component out to like a shape component. And then once we create this shape component, we can inject all this SVG shapes, effectively, so the polygon, ellipse, rectangle. And then I could also give it a few extra properties like center and ID, which is on this slide here with my brilliant PowerPoint arrows. So I've got a shape, as you saw before, the shape from a static file. And this static JSON file effectively is just serves the purpose of creating all of these different shapes. So I've got an ellipse function, and this here is real like SVG. And to create an SVG, an ellipse SVG, you need these two for the actual position, and then these two for the height and width. And then once you've got these, you can also, because it's React, you can start putting extra properties on there. So we've got the rectangle there, as you see, and if you just quickly note, you've got 652 lines in this file. That's only half the size of the file that I created, and I was just sat there for like a week just going through, putting rectangles and polygons and heights and centers, and it was madness, because like you can see that these are almost the same, but you'd still want the center, which I'll come on to in a second, of why we need the center. It slightly just skewed my time away from helping these guys carry on development of the app. Yeah,
we're in the pub, Tom. Don't worry about us.
So go on to the back end.
Yeah, so I sort of just, whilst Tom was doing all this stuff on the map, created all the back end for it. Obviously, we said it's deployed on Heroku. It's running on an Express server on MongoDB, and it has lots of endpoints, some of which are not even actually in use in the final project. So you can, there's like a user registration endpoint and password hashing and tokens. That all is there waiting for future stuff. I created one for bulk adding stations to the stations database, so just all at once.
So on that, you create that endpoint real nicely, whereas I was like line by line, not automating my workflow. So
whereas this has just made a big JSON object and pressed go on Postman and it did it all. Show all guards at a particular station, which was actually a way that we thought we were going to have to supply a station ID to show, or a name to show all the guards at that particular station. But we actually then changed to just getting all of the guards, all of the stations, and then treating that on the front end rather than on the back end. So
on that note, like that might trip us up going forward in the future, so there might be a little bit of development there as well. So, on to the demo.
yeah, that's it.
Do you want? So, quick overview of our UI. So this is obviously in web mode. We developed it using like the Chrome developer tools, which would make you think that if you use like the Chrome mobile app, would be good to go, but it isn't the case.
It works on some.
However, using Safari, it works an absolute treat. No idea why, but it works perfectly. So effectively, user would come in, and let's say they get to Victoria, they're like, oh damn, there's a guard, but he's on the other platform. Everybody, it's safe at Victoria, so we can click on Victoria. And so what we've done is we've clicked on Victoria. The map knows itself through like that shape component, passes it down to this modal we've called, injects Victoria Station, and we can register this guard name. No, the guards are good. Guards are good guys.
We're still working on the branding.
So we hit the form, that goes back off to the database. We were doing event.prevent default to like not re-render the page, but we thought no, we like to show where the guards have gone. So this is just literally just an image file that goes out, looks for the center of the shape on Victoria, and then it gives the user the opportunity to, if a different user was to submit.
I've already done it. Doesn't like mobile though.
Sorry, where have you submitted?
Or maybe it didn't work. I want Safari though.
So anyway, so thank you.
Mobile first. Look.
You're in the right place.
Right, I'm doing it now.
Anyway, so the icon lands on the station shape's center coordinates. That I literally went out and wrote all the center locations, because some of these stations have got like it was like a T shape, so there's no actual X and Y centroid. So I needed to go in and find that in the right place. And then we've got another like pop-up component here that gives us the station name, the guard name, and when it was actually deployed. So there'll be a little bit of logic on the back end. So like that guard isn't going to stay there all the time. It's going to disappear off to another station. So it needs removing from the live site. And I think that's our. Did you submit? No.
Need to refresh it.
No, you don't.
Do you need to refresh?
We shouldn't need to refresh.
Well,
Where did you submit?
it's not there.
When demos go wrong.
Yeah. Never mind. Ready?
So that's where we stand today. I mean, it looks very simple, but obviously we've created everything from scratch, from ground zero. Future plans: sign up to Google Ads, more monetization, SEO, social media accounts, all that good stuff. But in terms of the coding element, expiry time on guards, we think that's important. So guard doesn't stay in the same place forever. They're going to move around, get spotted in different locations. You don't want double reporting on guards and things like that. Utilize the Metrolink API. They do have one, and that incorporates travel information. So this would not only become a place where you view guards, but also you one-stop shop for all your travel information, is the tram late, etc. And that's just an API hookup, which should be relatively simple. Geolocation based on users' whereabouts. We'll still learn from Mountain Bagger, thank you. Heading towards the mobile app with using React Native again, similar to Mountain Bagger. The user sign up, we do actually have that. That's all good to go. We just haven't really found a reason to implement it. Primarily because we want to build out a user profile with things like reputation. So if you put in an image of the guard and a particularly funny nickname or something, then you get more user reputation points. Maybe you can see more guards who are operating on the network at the same time. If you're not signed up, maybe you're limited to just viewing 2 guards, for example, something like that. And the most important one really is intelligence of guard movements. So over a period of time, you always end up with a huge data set of a decentralized peer-to-peer monitoring of guards. And then we can look and go, around about 4 o'clock, you're probably going to see one at Piccadilly, as if you didn't know that already. But ultimately, I mean, that's where we head with this. And that's more or less us.
Yeah. Any questions?
I've got a question.
Yep.
Do you think this could possibly be used to maybe evade transfers?
Oh, we never thought about that.
Could be. Don't know.
Well, we wouldn't influence that. We want to bring about safety and increase passenger participation on the trams. That's
Tram safe, not tram steal.
Yes.
Okay,
It's in the name.
Great, I like it, it's in the name.
No, for your mobile app version, would you have a different version of the map? Because at the moment it's very long. Like you'd have to scroll around.
Yeah, so it's all zoomed in. So the Manchester Metrolink, their app already has the kind of solution that we would be looking at, and it kind of does go into that solution naturally on what we've got already. So I mean, hopefully we'll be able to imitate.
So the
our
Manchester
product looks really good.
Yeah, their mobile app is the same scale as our app. So if you imagine just it cuts what you see, and in effect it's the exact same UI on the Metrolink app. So you would use your finger to scroll left or right along the route. Yeah,
Can we just show it on the demo? Just go to mobile mode on Chrome, just so if you still got it open. If not, no worries.
Yeah, so and then just so like that's the same like user interaction that you'd see on the Metrolink mobile app.
Obviously, then you can just zoom this off.
Yeah, we can mess with the heights and stuff, but obviously it's a lot like the scaling. With the cool thing with SVG is like we can blow it up. Like you can zoom. Can you zoom in? You can zoom in, and all the coordinates keep the same location, which is pretty nice. And I can do a Control Plus. Just a bit more. So didn't really do anything, but you can effectively scroll in, and it doesn't like offset your station locations, which is a pretty nice feature.
It keeps the resolution as well. So enjoy
Yeah, and the resolution stays really sharp, which is nice. Any more? Or we don't?
Well, does Metrolink have an API that shows you, for example, where the trains are?
Yeah.
That's quite good.
Yeah. So that, like we said, like Mike said,
I don't think it shows you where the tram actually is, but I think it just gives you time that it's left and things like that. It doesn't
Oh,
give you a
yeah, so
real-time
like-
tracking.
it say like Manor Road. It'll say like 3 minutes
Yeah.
off Manor Road. Or,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it gives you that.
So
So
you
maybe
can kind
that's
of work it out.
3.0
Yeah.
once we get the mobile mode.
Yeah, that would actually be a really cool feature. Have a
Yeah.
moving tram
Like a
with
tram
the guards
line.
on board.
I guess we can actually kind of calculate it from their API anyway. It doesn't need to be exact. You know the distances between tram stops, and you can do a mathematical solution that's imperfect rather than use a geolocation version.
Cool. One thing that we are not pushing is the colours. I think we like the colour situation, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like it because it's a bit sketchy. Like ourselves.
Thank you. I guess if there's any more, is there any more for anyone? Oh, because we're sketchy. Wait for knock on the door. FBI or something.
I'd say it's been streamed now, but
It's my name in the URL.
You're gonna use the brand and the logo and everything.
Yeah.
Isn't it just dropped it? Anything else you know? Nothing on that side. What's USB?
What type of
Any other adapters or what?
We've got a weird little adapter. I mean, we've got a weird port.
USB-C?
That's a USB-C.
Yeah, USB-C, I like that.
That is a USB-C one.
Yeah, that's a USB-C.
Right.
It's a bit more squarer than that.
Yeah,
I think you need a USB.
Well, it's another type of USB, I think.
Have you not got your laptop with you, sir?
Yeah, but yeah, it
There's
just don't
another,
work on
there's another adapter here. See if this one works.
Is it the
Don't think so.
Is that the same?
Yeah.
Can you send your slides from the project to one of us?
I've got one on my
Yeah,
Oh, no, I don't have one of those. Display port. You don't have a mini display port.
I don't think we have one of
Do you
those.
want to send the link to us?
Yeah. Does anyone, I think it only works on Linux. Right?
I can do it on mine if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I just send it to your
Send me the link.
Slack?
Yeah, just send it on Slack.
So no, never mind, yeah. The presentation was
Yeah, who's in charge of the emoticons? Little
Tom,
comment.
definitely.
Tom put a peachy bum on. Yeah.
So I thought Mike might have been semi-responsible as well.
Mike was definitely on board with it though.
Who put Chico Tom? Was that you as well?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my best jokes that.
Yeah, yeah.
Slim Joe kicking.
The link.
The link to the presentation.
The link to the.
Yeah, it's on the slide. Hopefully that's that slide with you.
It's been for years that I've been with it, so.
I have actually got like 3 adapters in my bag. They're all VGA.
You've not got display port?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's really good, yeah.
VGA to HDMI, VGA to USB-C.
Oh yeah, John just logged it.
Because we have VGA screen still.
We've got it.
Cool. So, guys, about signal.
Oh god. Funky cable.
No, it was okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine now.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. Use the Cohort.
As in using the same mouth.
Linux power. No, but it will read.
Try it, fine.
Yeah.
No, but it does it not do it?
That's fine.
So you can see that, right? Am I live?
Do a right, do a, yeah.
Why don't you pick up slideshow?
Right
Yeah,
at the top. Slideshow at the top.
Millions of people are watching. 11 million.
Yeah, we currently have 10,251 people watching.
No.
No.
Is it just Russell?
Russell from the beach and
That's
Spain.
viral.
That is viral, yeah.
Stealing Wi-Fi from the local hotel.
There you go. You're up. You're up.
Nice.
That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. This is our app. Jane's not here tonight, but she obviously made it with us. Sam will be doing the left and rights, and my name's G. This is the Goal Hub. It's basically an app for football fans to watch the best goals of each month, categorised by leagues, and it basically stops the problem of having you to scour the internet to find Pogba's goal on the weekend and to see if that was better than Kane's goal last weekend. Our problem was to stop people scouring on Twitter and YouTube to find these videos, and then to settle the debate of whose goal was better, driven by user likes, using a ranking system. So our original plan or original objectives were to build a front-end app which cleanly displayed the top 10, 8 to 12 goals each month, categorised by which league it was scored in. An app which ranked the best goal of the month based on user likes, so that the users could log in and like a goal, and that would essentially push that goal to the top of the list based on all the user likes. And that would award the goal of the month, so to speak, each month. We also wanted to have an amateur area where you could upload a video of your amateur goal in your 5-a-side tournament, and also try and win the goal of the month for amateurs. To try and drive a bit of a buzz on YouTube or whatever, Facebook. Next, please. So, how do we arrive at our MVP, our minimal viable product? Our guidance from Dan and Susanna in the first week was to ensure we had an MVP to show today, which we did, so thank you. Given the guidance, we decided not to pursue an amateur upload or a back end until we could deliver a functioning front end. We decided to use the YouTube API to fetch the videos directly from YouTube straight into the app, so that we didn't have to hard code any links. And in place of the user likes functionality, because we didn't have a back end yet, we decided to add share buttons to Facebook, Twitter, to promote a social aspect for the app.
Yeah, so at the minute, your likes within the app aren't saved anywhere. So on refresh, it just goes back to the number of likes that are actually on YouTube. So if somebody actually likes the video on YouTube, then that'll sort of transfer to the app itself. On top of Facebook and Twitter, Ursula actually mentioned this before, we also add the WhatsApp share function because, as G mentioned, we want to create a bit more of a buzz, around the debate on the best goal from that weekend or the month. So it would make more sense, rather than sharing on my profile that nobody visits, that you could share on WhatsApp within your groups, and then people start a chat. So that, again, that would be implemented later on in terms of the back end side, where we'd be able to store those sort of interactions, the likes, etc. But for now, I think the functionality of the share button, and again the ranking system also sort of develops through the number of likes that on the thing on YouTube.
Challenges we came across. Although we feel happy with our final product today, it did take a lot of time to get to where we were. I think we thought we'd be where we were maybe a few weeks ago, or at least a week ago, to give ourselves time for back end. But just problems with the YouTube API and CSS, which is a pain. They didn't leave as much time to try and get onto the back end and develop the app further. But we would like to do that going forward.
Yeah, I think what was important that for our MVP, we decided we did want an app that just looked nice, and it was like easily shareable, and the links in it actually worked, and then people could share the content. So we did want things lined up very nicely, regardless of which device. It is a mobile first design. Probably doesn't work as well on a desktop. But yeah, as G mentioned, the CSS was a bit of a pain, but
we designed it to fit in a mobile screen. I think Dan told us in the first week, didn't he?
Yeah.
To start in, and if you want to build out. So it does fit in a mobile screen nicely.
Yeah.
It just doesn't translate to a desktop very well. Do you want to do a demo?
I'll do the demo next year.
So this is the home screen. You just click on the big football to get in there. And once you enter the home screen, you're presented with all your categories. We've got the amateur one there ready to develop on, but none of these are functional yet. But we will show you the Premier League, which we have. Essentially, the infrastructure is translatable to all the categories. So. So you have your goals ranked by YouTube likes, pulled from the YouTube API. We try to fit it all in nice little cards to be rendered nicely and quite uniformly, which took so long. Just for CSS. can play the videos directly from here. We did have a bit of trouble making the video disappear, but with Urzel's help, we managed to just put in a bit of code to delete it from the DOM, basically, when you click back.
We get to
Oh,
no, get to watch the
Come
Yes, that was the app, sorry.
It's from all the angles.
And yeah, we've got our little menu navbar in there to take you to the home screen or the categories, and that is essentially the app. Obviously you can check the share buttons. They go directly to Facebook and Twitter.
So for the navbar itself, we used the Material UI framework, which this particular navbar is just wrapped in like a draw component. So the code itself, which I won't go into because it's very messy and refactored, we've developed it so that this sort of nested menu can sort of evolve with the app itself. So ideally, when we do add content to these different leagues and tournaments, you'll then be able to navigate. So at the minute, you can just click on home, it goes back home. But clicking on the categories parent, I suppose, would then come up with its children menus, which would be Premier League, and you'd be able to navigate sort of straight into a different league instead of going back to categories at the minute. So as G mentioned, with the share buttons, should work.
Yeah, do it.
And then
This is logging into.
Yeah.
So yeah, those share buttons. We'd maybe have a WhatsApp one as well, based on Urzel's comment.
Yeah. I'll go back.
So yeah, that's your app. In the future, we would like to expand on it and maybe go into other sports.
Just drag this mouse to the left, so, and then click that to the opposite slot.
press the Windows key and type.
Crashed.
Oh, it crashed before, yeah.
Oh, it crashed.
Needs restarting.
Go on Slack. Good job we weren't talking about anything daft there, isn't
There you go, feature, yeah.
So yeah, we'd like to implement the back end obviously and have those user likes drive the ranking system rather than YouTube doing it, because we'd like to lower our reliance on YouTube eventually. We'd like to create pages for all the top football leagues, obviously just fill out all the categories, but that should be done quite easily because it's the same infrastructure. Then expand into other sports, maybe have boxing knockout of the year, cricket wicket of the tournament, or rugby try of the month. Names to be decided. And yeah, as I said, eventually low reliance on YouTube. Any questions?
That's a clap and then a hand.
I know what was going back. So on your components, when they get rendered, and the titles of the goals, they're all. How is that brought in? Is that from YouTube?
Yeah.
So like James Ward-Prowse scored the screamer. Is that from
Direct from YouTube.
Ah,
Yeah.
We just cut them so it's only 30 characters.
Yeah, so you can set the max number of characters, because that's what was sort of putting all the components out of sync or out of alignment, was the number of characters in each description. So G managed to figure that out and sort of cut the limit.
make it uniform.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're basically trying to make it look pretty for about a week.
Would you see users joining sort of creating profiles, or would it just be sort of open for anybody to vote without joining?
Yeah, we would like a sign-in page and a user profile, only because of the amateur category where you would upload your own videos. But we'd thought about having to police videos and not knowing what users are going to
a lot of
upload.
vigilance, yeah.
Yeah, it could get very messy.
But yeah, that would be the main sort of USP for the app when that sort of amateur side comes in. It would be mainly for the sort of pro side is just visual. You can watch videos at like 3 taps. You can get to the best videos. But then the social amateur side, more grassroots level, you'd be able to upload the best goals from your sort of grassroots league. So.
Any more? Thank you.
One, sorry. I'll ask you right now. It's not that exciting.
Just reading the last conversation there. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who presented today. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully we've done good. We've not had too many complaints, so I'm really proud of what you've all achieved. I think our staff who are here today, we've got Ian, Susanna and Ursula at the back. I think they're also very proud of everything you've done, so thank you. And well done, to be honest. I'm going to turn the air conditioning back on now because I can see students in the video looking like they're about to pass out. Sorry, it is a very loud air conditioner. But yeah, we still have some pizza going, we still have some drinks going, so feel free to hang around for a bit, go outside, get some fresh air maybe. If you are watching us over YouTube, thank you for tuning in. And if anybody has any other questions or anything, just let me know. But I'd just like to give one final round of applause, please, to everybody who presented today. And for those who were unable to make it today to give their presentations, please give a round of applause, everybody.